The views and opinions of this guest do not reflect the views or opinions of the United States government, the Department of the Interior, the Department of Defense, the Department of Agriculture, the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, or any private county or state firefighting organization.
Welcome to episode 14 of the Adventuring for Mere Mortals podcast. I'm Kyle, joined by co-host Trevor, and today's guest is Matt Pretzel Mason, a wildland firefighter, long-distance hiker, and all-around hoot.
Our guest this month is Matt Pretzel Mason. So I've been following Matt on Instagram for a while. Like most of our guests, I just track him down over Instagram or social media. But yeah, Matt, he
stalks them.
Yeah, I pretty much stalk people, and I send cold messages to everybody until someone says, "Yeah, I'll come on."
Hey, what people put on the internet is what they put on the internet.
Yeah,
You're
right?
just looking.
Yep, that's right. But yeah, Matt's a cool dude. He's a long distance hiker from way back, Triple Crown, Long Trail. I'm gonna not do all of these, but a lot of shorter trails. I think your most recent trail was the Superior hiking trail up in Minnesota. That one's on my list, so I might have to talk to you offline about that one.
Yeah.
But he's also done some bike packing, and I think the meat of what we're going to talk about in this episode is you've done a lot of work with trail crews, and now you're really deep into the wildland firefighting game. So, and on top of that, you're like on your social media, you're out snowboarding, skateboarding. So you just live outside, man. You're just outside all the time.
I like to be very outside or very inside.
Hey. So yeah, I mean, you'll do a better job of explaining yourself than I was. So yeah, just give us like a little short intro about what you're about.
Yeah, my name is Matt Mason, and I like being outside. I like a life full of adventure. So sometimes that looks like walking on long trails. Sometimes that is working as a volunteer, building said trails, or getting to be a paid person to build those trails. A couple years ago, I realized that I think my skill set and mentality were better off fighting wildfire than building trail. It's a little more, I would say, much more of an adrenaline rush than like swinging a Pulaski to clear out another water bar. Now I get to fly in helicopters or be swinging that exact same Pulaski, but the world is on fire. So I grew up in the Midwest and was lucky enough. My best friend growing up, they were an outdoor family, the Johnsons, and I got to tag along on their canoe trips and their state park trips and whatnot, and learned about the Appalachian Trail pretty early on. And I think I was maybe 10 or 11, maybe even younger. And I was like, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. Conceptually, like there's a trail more than a couple miles and it's not just in a circle. That's awesome. And so set off on hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2012. And I've, been chasing trails ever since.
That's pretty sweet. So before we jump into our main schedule, we're going to do our little catch up. Kyle, what have you been up to, man?
Oh, living the dream. Got everything moved in. Now in my living room, instead of a couch, I have a hammock. So I will die single. No, I'm slowly, like I said, getting moved in. Last week I was out in Pittsburgh. Didn't get to do any hiking or anything, but found a number of fantastic breakfast diners. Checked a bunch of big projects off at work. So, yeah, it's time to get back outside and play. The weather's really crazy here. It's going from like one day I had 4 inches of snow. The next day it was 55. Over the weekend it was single digits. And today it was back in the 50s. Yesterday was in the 50s. It's all over the map. What about you, Trev?
Sure. Not much, man. It's like hibernation weather here, man. It's been cold. Like we're getting a couple days above freezing, but it's just kind of been like kind of miserable outside. When it is above freezing, it's humid, so it just like cuts through you. And I haven't readjusted to Midwest winters. I'm still all about that Louisiana winter. Had that for 7 or 8 years, where it was just like 45 was a really cold day in Louisiana. So yeah, a lot of hanging out inside.
Driving the Rivian?
Driving the Rivian around a little bit. I haven't like taken it out in any crazy snow or anything like that. But yeah, just fixing stuff on my house, trying to get through my list of things to do before it gets nice outside, and then I'll be outside all the time. But I guess other than that, Ragbri did its route announcement a week or so ago, so I'm pretty excited about that. And I got to get back on my bike and get back into biking shape, so I can bike across Iowa in 5-6 months. But
I should probably get on that. It'll be fun.
Are y'all both doing Ragbri?
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, awesome. Are they doing a gravel route?
Yes.
They have. We were actually texted about it today. They haven't announced it, but one of the days they'll have a gravel day.
Oh, just one day. Okay, cool.
So from what I understand, like they have the main road route, and then gravel does like little semicircles off the main route to like the meeting town in the middle, and then they'll go off again after the meeting town to the end town.
Awesome. Yeah.
Go
ahead.
No, I was just saying Kyle and I are both planning on doing the gravel day as
Sweet.
of right now as a part of that.
Awesome. Yeah, there's this awesome I did a bike packing route last year, and it's like iowagravelmaps.com or something.
Ooh.
And it's incredible, and it is so accurate. But I think Iowa has more gravel roads than any other state.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah,
There's a lot of farm roads. Yeah,
you could do like your own kind of adjacent Ragbri all gravel if you wanted to.
Ooh,
Ragbri adjacent.
Yeah, just poach Ragbri.
You just come into the same meeting. It's like, no, I'm going on the dirt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, that leads me to Matt. What have you been up to, man?
Yeah, it's winter, so for me, that means a lot of snowboarding, a lot of walking uphill on my split board and making it a snowboard and then snowboarding down. And a lot of Nordic skiing as well. It's hard for me to run in the winter, especially in town. Like that's my nightmare. Yeah. So getting on, I have some Nordic skis that I like to ski around on the slightly flats, but like old logging roads and stuff. Super fun.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, I think it is time to hit our main topic. So you kind of touched on this in your self intro, but like getting introduced to the outdoors, you said you went out with like your family friends a lot. So I know for me, it was like camping and stuff. Were they staying locally, or were you just like tagging with them when they went all over the country, or what was going on?
It was mostly like their adventures were all pretty Midwest based.
That's cool.
You know, and I like as a kid, I went to a little summer camp and did some like little trips with that. And, you know, went on a spring break backpacking trip in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And, you know, I had already thought about the AT, but when I got to stand on there, I was like, oh no, I'm doing this.
Oh yeah.
Met some hiker, and this would have been 2003, who had like a refrigerator of a backpack on. It was just like, oh my gosh, that's so cool. Like, you know, now looking back, I'm like, oh man, that guy shouldn't have had half that crap, but I did.
He's just hurting himself.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody we've talked to, there's always like somebody, usually somebody or some group that really draws them out there. And I'm glad that you had that as well with like family, friends. But yeah, you said the AT was the first big one, right? And you had your big aspirations. Yeah. Was it everything you thought it would be and more, or was it different than you thought it would be?
Yeah, I hiked in 2012, graduated college December of 2011, and you know, February 29th of 2012, I was standing on Springer Mountain, and you know, I'd spent so much time reading books, and like I knew every last little morsel. Like I almost spoiled, I feel like, the trail for me by like And this was there was blogs, but like, like now you can do all your research on TikTok and Reddit, etc. And like, dude, everyone's using the tools that we have at the time, right? But I definitely, all other trails, I really backed off that because I felt like I lost, like, knowing every little tradition and every little thing. I kind of lost, some of the serendipitous moments on the trail just because I read this in a book. And then especially now, like how easy it is to, put up photos, etc. You can just see the whole trail before you hike it, if you will.
Yeah. You could make a photo mosaic of all just the pictures on Instagram of every inch of the trail at this point.
Yeah. And again, we're all just humans using the technology that we have, right? So like, I can't, I am a old curmudgeon, but I've always been an old curmudgeon, even when I was like, like 12 years old. So, I mean, it exceeded. I was looking forward to that. It was this kind of. I was just telling a friend today, like, college is this formative experience that a lot of people have, and I really feel like my college experience wasn't that big of a deal to me. It was the Appalachian Trail and walking from Georgia to Maine and watching the seasons happen before me along this continent's oldest mountains. That was a way more formative experience than sitting in a classroom learning about outdoor recreation, because that's what I have my degree in.
That's kind of like theory versus application, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we definitely did like some awesome trips in the Ozarks and Southern Illinois and the Shawnee. Thank you. Shoshone is like national forest here over the state in Wyoming. So I definitely had some hands-on stuff, but I'm sure as your viewer or your listeners are familiar, like, what you pack for essentially a guided trip where you need to make sure 10 college kids don't die in the woods is not what, like, me responsible for only myself, no university regulations, any kind of that stuff, risk management, like, isn't a factor if I get hurt as opposed to 3 people get hurt and, that whole rigmarole. So,
I used to say, don't make me do paperwork.
Yeah. Yes. I had a good friend of mine from Long Trails. He used to be a caretaker in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park on Mount LeConte, which is like a private lodge. Yeah. And we would go up there and visit them and, bring them fresh groceries and stuff. And we would sled on lunch trays. And he'd be like, the first rule of sledding on Mount LeConte is no hemorrhaging. And, we'd build like a huge jump and be like, okay, no hemorrhaging. Hucker meat bags down the stairs. But
so how did you get the trail name Pretzel?
Oh yeah, I was sitting in Icewater Spring Shelter in my favorite mountain range in the whole world, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. And Icewater Springs, it's like really close to Newfound Gap, which is, we're a lot of jumping off point. It's the only road crossing over the trail within the park, right in the middle. And so there was a mix of, folks out for a night, folks out for a couple nights, people attempting through hikes, just a little bit of everybody. And it was very jovial atmosphere, and everyone was really, like hanging out together. It was a really great night. And, someone started talking about how George Bush choked down a pretzel and got like a shiner. He collapsed and hit the coffee table. And it was like kind of like a big story in the early, 2000s. It was like pre 9/11 when like news was fun.
yeah, when news was fun.
Look what the president did. And I was like, well, yeah, that's my high school mascot's claim to fame. Like, we took down the president of the United States. And this woman from like South Georgia looks at me. She's like, what? What do you mean? I was like, yeah, my high school mascot, it's a pretzel. Like, the snack food. She's like, well, that's it. You're a pretzel.
And it's stuck.
And yeah, here I am. We got our own little gang sign. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, full up.
I'm never going to look at Aunt Annie's again the same way. You have ruined it.
For our listeners, if you do 2 peace signs and then you cross your middle fingers and then you top them, you'll get a pretzel.
You'll have to send me a picture of that and I'll put it on Instagram.
That will be the cover for this episode.
Oh, that's great.
Wow.
Yeah. This it's funny, this is like the most school spirit I've ever had is like post graduation, like half my friends just know me as Pretz,
Well, we could sit here and talk about all the trails you've done for hours and hours and hours, but I want to get to the meat of it. So I'm imagining after doing these trails, a lot of these trails, you're like, hey, I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of these trails. I want to give back. That's normally the direction people go. So it seems like you've done that by starting doing volunteer trail work and you kind of worked way up. So
yeah,
how'd that go? How'd you get into that?
Actually on, in college and even in like rural Illinois and Freeport, Illinois, where I grew up, like we would help out at the local forest preserve. We were just like little junior high kids. I mean, my buddy Jones growing up and, in college, kind of same thing, getting involved with there's a county park. It was also the spring fed reservoir that was the town's drinking water. So yeah, that's kind of good to keep that thing in tip top shape. And yeah, I just, from the outset is just like giving back. I kind of knew that I wanted to help build a trail, maintain the trail. And I took a day off at Bob Peoples, who is still around, which is awesome. He's an old Vermonter that moved down to northern Tennessee, and he's does a lot of trail work down there with the Tennessee Eastman Canoeing and Hiking Club. And their section, I think they have 150 miles from the Virginia border south, and it is world-class maintenance. Wow. And I stayed a night at his house, and he hosted me and went out with the club and did a day's worth trail building. And I was just like, yep, this is what I wanted to do, but we don't have these mountains in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So like brushing out a trail just looks a lot different,
Midwest trail work is like just running a lawnmower down a lot of
absolutely.
Trail, right?
Absolutely. That is, that's fair. And, it's so easy to like shit on the Midwest. But there is a lot of great places, and I really value the state parks that I grew up going to. And even as an adult, having walked, almost 9,000 miles, I love going back to those places. They're still just as, and I think I appreciate them more. It's just like, wow, this could be a cornfield. But we have this beautiful prairie remnant that, this whole state used to be covered. Illinois used to be covered in prairie. And like, this is somewhat of an intact ecosystem. And as like a child, I didn't really understand that.
Moving back, I've realized I've been like, at least in my head, comparing like the state of Louisiana with the state of Illinois. State of Illinois does a lot of random prairie restorations. Like along interstates, you'll just see it's like, why the hell is that like 7-foot tall grass along the interstate? It's like, yeah, that was definitely seeded there intentionally because it's like federal or state ground that they can do that on. And Louisiana just doesn't do that. There's no thought like that at all. So I definitely appreciate it.
So I just learned this the other day. I think Illinois is in the top 5 in terms of states that pump money into outdoor recreation.
Really? I had no idea.
It's either 5 or 6. I can't remember the exact number.
I mean, when you think about the whole western side of the state, I mean, the Mississippi River. Mm-hmm. The backwaters of the Mississippi are some of the most beautiful places I've ever been in Illinois, like without a doubt. That's awesome. And I'm not like a paddler by trade or anything, but I've spent plenty of summer afternoons there. And that makes sense. And not to mention Lake Michigan, all the other waterways. you know, we got a lot of state land in Illinois. So, but I'm going to get back on track. It's hard for me. But yeah, so I took a couple days off and hitched a ride almost 1,000 miles. I was somewhere in northern Pennsylvania to southern Virginia to do hardcore, which was 2 days of like hardcore trail maintenance. And they would get former through hikers, current through hikers to do the huge, they'd have 100 people working on a section of trail. Wow. And they've done a lot of, because it's sometimes in these trails, unless you're going to get a helicopter, or you're going to get a string of horses involved, you just truly need, it's the labor of like getting the building materials to the site. In the East, the trail corridor comes in contact with roads. So, it's a lot shorter carriers, but sometimes you just need literal tons and tons of gravel. And who better to help than 100 former and current through hikers?
Yeah, got their trail legs
that you can just they're humping the gravel up and down, up and down. And that left a big impression on me. And after I got done with the Appalachian Trail, I had a job for 2 or 3 years working at an outdoor ed center in Michigan. And the North Country Trail was 30 minutes from where I lived. And so I worked with the West Michigan chapter of the North Country Trail, and just truly loved that. And that was like constructing brand new trail, which is so much different than clearing water bars and, bucking out the trail corridor. So I learned a lot there. And that gave me and was able to land a job with Appalachian Trail Conservancy, leading a trail crew in my beloved Great Smoky Mountains in the park there. And so I did that summer of 2016. And then, of course, that landed me with federal service. I did a trail season with Big Bend down in National Park down in West Texas. Yeah. Great gravel biking out there.
Ooh, yeah. I don't doubt it.
But yeah, so that was just kind of the progression.
So yeah, like building your way up, like every bit of experience lets you get to the next step and put that on your resume and say, hey, I've done it here. Let's go somewhere else and get bigger and bigger.
Exactly. And yeah, these, especially in the case of the Appalachian Trail, it was all built by volunteers and has continued to be maintained by volunteers. I'm pretty serious on I don't really care about the trail community in the sense of humans, because I know that'll always take care of itself. I'm concerned, do we have a right of way to connect these parcels of land together to make a trail that actually goes from point A to point B over thousands of miles? That is and is it a maintained trail? If, in 2019, I hiked the Continental Divide, and, there were times where it's just there's literally no trail, even though my paper map says I'm standing on the trail. My 2 independent GPS files are saying I'm on the trail, but there's no trail to be found. And that's also the nature and the beauty. One of the awesome things about hiking the Continental Divide, even now, let alone 20 years ago. I mean, it's changed a lot, but it's still rugged and remote. And, there's lots of unfinished sections of trail. Definitely makes you think we have to be the solution.
Yeah, and the CDC is much younger than the AT too.
So absolutely,
it just takes time to do all these things. Yeah. Before we get too deep in, there are probably people here that don't really know what trail maintaining and trail building entails.
Yeah.
So I guess trail building, I think people would get a better, or at least have a better mental image of there's wilderness and you have to make a path through it that will last up to some level. But yeah, could you expound on that? That's my very quick definition of what building a trail means.
Yeah, no, great. Thank you for, sometimes I get a very tunnel visioned and kind of forget hey, we might have folks that are never listened to a hiking podcast before, or have hiked thousands of miles but don't know anything about trail maintenance. So yeah, if you're building a trail over a mountain from point A to point B, right? Historically, folks would we'll just make it up the mountain. And that was the 1930s wisdom. hey, we want to go to this pretty view on top of this mountain. And they would just punch it. And what inevitably happens, the two biggest enemies of trail are water and people, because the water washes the trail away and then the people help the water wash it away. So today, in like, modern times, we do some nice switchbacks that would go up and down, kind of switchbacking back and forth. Those are going to make it easier for the person hiking than walking straight up. And that's going to help dump more water off. And instead of it, the water will be able to flow over the trail as opposed to using the trail like a water slide. Because I'm sure, or maybe I'm not sure, but if you've ever been in like hiking in a trail and somehow the trail is like shoulder deep and you're like, what the hell? That little section right there was just really poorly designed. And it's just been eroded, and, thousands and thousands of humans or horse travel, or if there's other users like, motorized use, that's going to also help dig those ruts deeper. And so there's lots of different, and I mean, there are people that have dedicated their lives to writing books and manuals like this. Like it's a whole, that could be its own podcast, like not just episode, but like podcast.
Wow.
What does that?
No, I think that's great. So that's
cool.
building. So moving on to maintaining,
right.
What's the next step? So like this trail's been around 50 years or whatever. What do you do to keep it the same quality as if it were new, or as close as you can get?
Yeah. So some of the work that's been done in the East a lot is actually not maintaining trail, but these old trails that were just going straight up mountains, they've just put in these switchbacks over time. Okay. And that can be, and you're taking what could be just, no one quote me on these numbers here, but like you could make a 1/2 mile trail that just went straight up. You could put that into a 2.5 mile trail. You're going to make it longer, but that's a lot of work and you have to maintain all of that. So some of that is, still being done to this day, even along the Appalachian Trail. It seemingly grows every year because folks are out there putting in the work to make it a better and more sustainable trail. But maintenance, the big thing is clearing out a corridor. So if you have the National Scenic Trail, which are, 12 trails, they have their own specs. But generally, when I was instructing, I would always say, I want a full arm length to your right and a full arm length to your left. And literally as high as you can go without getting on someone's shoulders.
Okay.
Because if you've got some of these trails, the Appalachian Trail in particular wouldn't run into this, but other trails like that don't see as much maintenance, it might only get maintained every couple of years. So, I am like, blow it out. Of course, if you're in a wilderness area, that's a little different. There's a different standard there, like a federally designated wilderness, but you have to have that in the back of your mind. Like, what if for whatever reason, no one's able to come out here for 3 years? And it's pretty wild. I used to live in North Georgia, and we would go find old trail beds, and you could still see the bed of the trail there. It was just it was a bushwhack to get to stay on. It's also a never ending goal. It's a never ending process. There's no way to just it's going to keep raining. The snow in the spring is going to melt and it's going to put more water down. And we'll build during maintenance, you build diversions to kick the water off the trail. And so those diversions, called water bars, have to be cleared by hand. There's no other way to do that. And it doesn't matter what climate you're in. If you have some sort of mountain, and even in Big Bend where it only rains in July, they have water bars everywhere because it's tsunami-esque. It's like the trails turn into water slides, even though they're really well designed. It's never ending. Wherever you are, any sort of topography that you've put a walking path on, you have to maintain.
Mother Nature's really good at reclaiming things that are installed.
Absolutely.
But that's really good. And you mentioned wilderness areas. So one of our previous guests, Alex, he was actually a trail crew leader in Southern Illinois in the Shawnee National Forest. Mm-hmm. And they did a lot of work in wilderness areas. And he was telling me it's no power tools. whatsoever.
Yeah, so
That's
don't mind me while I like fully nerd out on your guess.
No, go for it.
Yeah, in 1964, the Wilderness Act was passed, and it essentially said, we're not going to build roads in these areas. We're not going to build permanent structures. What's there is there. So like you'll be in wilderness areas that have like mine tailings, but it could be hundreds of years old. And then the only travel there is going to be non-mechanized. So like human foot travel and horse travel. And so that means when we're maintaining, trail crews are maintaining that they're using crosscut saws or hand tools. They're not using a chainsaw. Even building bridges, the same thing applies. Of course, it's the federal government, so there's always workarounds. For instance, with my fire experience, being on fires that are happening in wilderness areas, most of the time, we do the right thing and we just let them burn and maintain and check the fire as it's needed. But sometimes, for whatever reasons, maybe there's a historic property within the wilderness area that's not actually wilderness, and they want that to be defended. We just log our chainsaw hours, and just like that is submitted. But that's because there's an active emergency happening. You can't do that because you're like, oh, we got to clear all those trees over the trail. It doesn't work like that.
no.
And so, but
That's
what
really
it's using traditional tools, I became a much better sawyer on a chainsaw because I had some training in crosscut. By no means was I like a killer crosscut sawyer, but everything is slow. Everything, it takes so long to do these cuts. You don't want to mess them up. You want to make sure whether I never got to be in charge of felling a tree, but got to be the number 2 on a crosscut felling operation. And then when, I started fighting wildfire, all of that just clicked when I got this mechanized piece of equipment that like can go really fast and get that tree down. And it's just like, oh, okay. Yep. I see what we got. And like, I love felling with crosscut. I mean, it's so, working with your partner and, these are 6-foot saws. You're, pulling back and forth. Yeah. There's a beautiful rhythm to it. That you just don't get with a 2-stroke engine that's destroying my hearing. So
yeah, you basically learned on hard mode, and then later on you get the E mode with the chainsaw, right?
Well, it gets a little harder when the world's on fire, but
well, yeah, of course. Then you add the difficulty back again. So there might be some nostalgia in here. But what was your favorite place to trail crew? And I think I might know the answer.
Oh, it's the Great Smoky Mountains National.
Yeah, that's what I figured. No
Shocking.
contest.
Yeah, no contest.
Okay, so you did the trail crew thing for a while. Mm-hmm. What made you, or what inspired you to make the jump to the firefighting?
Well, before we get to that, Trev,
okay.
I want to put in a plug that everyone should at least experience trail maintenance or something once in their life, because then you appreciate the trail. You're giving back.
Absolutely.
You really gain an appreciation whenever you come to a section of trail that's been newly maintained as to the level of effort and number of hours that went into do a quarter-mile section or something like that. Nothing is trivial.
Yeah, I'll be running with some of my guys on the fire crew, and I'll be like, "Wow, those steps are incredible!" And they'll be like, "Shut the fuck up, Mason! No one cares about the stairs."
That just sounds like a fire crew in general.
Yeah. But no, I mean, it really is pretty amazing. The amount of time it takes folks, and most of them volunteers, to build a staircase. A rock staircase, you could spend 2 weeks to make 4 steps. Like you're pulling rocks from 200 vertical down the hill through essentially a zip line. It is incredible. And there's so many folks that have years, decades of experience doing that. And, they're doing it for borderline minimum wage, the ones that are lucky enough to get paid and aren't volunteers. And there's always opportunities, where you live. Like I got my true start in like rural Illinois. it does not matter. Even if it is just jumping on the riding lawnmower and mowing the trail, like that is, someone has to do that, right?
Yeah.
Like I value public places where I can go do silly things with my friends, or usually by myself.
Thank you for pulling me back, Kyle. That was a really good point to make. Okay, on to wildland firefighting. What inspired you to make the jump to this next phase? I'll call it
adrenaline.
Yeah. Yeah, I like to go fast. But similar to fire is very similar to my personality. Like I can be on like right now. And then like I knew that I'd like my personality changed during the pandemic because like my life like wasn't affected because I just like go run or go ski or whatever. Like I don't really go out, I was like bummed. I love live music, but it was one of those little weird things like, oh yeah, just kind of hang out and do my own little program. And with fire, it is really that duality. There are these, very just huge adrenaline rush, right? And then it's just sometimes you're sitting and waiting, hurry up and wait. And that can be very taxing in a different way. But to get back to the actual question, I love to dodge a question and just go with it, go tell my own thing. Yeah, I was, I think I was in Big Bend, and there's just like a little roadside fire that was probably started from a vehicle, someone dragging chains or something. And we called it in to the dispatch center, and they're pretty small. It's in the winter, so there wasn't a lot of fire crew there. Their fire season picks up late spring. And I just got talking to one of the folks there. And when I was on the year prior, when I was on the Pacific Crest Trail, I sat and hung out with a guy in Sayad Valley, California, that worked for the Forest Service and just learning about it. I hiked a couple 100 miles with this woman, Blazing Star, who she works for the state in Florida. And she's a burn boss in Florida. The state and the Forest Service there, they burn more acres, or they burn so many acres doing prescribed fire in the winter. And so just getting kind of her take on it and, just kind of all those little puzzle pieces. I was like, yeah, I should try this fire thing.
That's cool.
And it's definitely a different sense of adventure than through hiking or, trail maintenance, but it's pretty awesome. It's the best job in the world.
Yeah. So explain what you do. Like, I'm sure there are different kind of jobs in that whole realm, but
yeah,
give experience with your experience. What kind of different jobs have you had within that?
Yeah, I've worked on a 20-person hand crew, which is kind of just a 20-person module that can go in and suppress fire. If you can just imagine a piece of paper, just if you imagine 1 acre of land on fire, a fire crew goes in and essentially starts at a safe place, and we call it our anchor, whether that can be off of a road or, sometimes a body of water. And they'll send 2 crews, one side around the right and one around the left, and eventually they'll wrap it. And they're just essentially building a trail. They're digging down to the mineral soil in front of those people, digging with the tools. There are people, chainsaws, felling all the trees, and, specs vary. But they're essentially, what it looks like is someone built a trail there when they've built fire line. And that's kind of the premise. And of course, that is the Reader's Digest, the elevator pitch of Wildland Fire. When I was on a 20-person hand crew, we're an initial attack crew. So we were sent in on the local district or sometimes nationally. And we'd be the first boots on the ground to go get eyes on the fire on the ground. Sometimes a fire lookout from, several miles drainages over would call it in, or commercial airlines will call in fires. Private, like hobby pilots, call them in. Federal agencies do detection flights where they just fly looking for fires. Like that's just what they do. So I got a taste there. And that was, that is on the ground. You are going direct with the fire. I had some pretty intense experiences doing that and just loved it. And balancing that with the downtime was really nice. And the camaraderie amongst the crew When it's really good, it's great. And this little bit of suffering, a lot of bit of suffering, and just physical exertion, hiking reminds me of firefighting. Firefighting reminds me of hiking. There's so much overlap there for me. I just loved it. And just kept moving up and moving around in the fire world after that first season.
Yeah, I imagine shared suffering, that shared experience, I imagine would just create crazy bonds because you're all going through the same thing no matter what, and you all just have to get through it, through this stressful, dangerous.
And fire guys are all hilarious because of the downtime. I asked him one time, I was like, why are you guys all so funny? And they're like, because we're bored 90% of the time waiting for something to happen. We have to entertain ourselves.
So how do you call someone to get a job like on a wildland fire crew? How does that even work? I wouldn't even know who to call.
There are federal agencies, so that's going to be the Forest Service, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Those are going to be, and I'm sure I'm forgetting one other acronymed fire agency, but those are federal agencies that do it. And then you have like state crews, like the state of Montana has, state of Idaho, state of Wyoming. And then the county even has crews. Like Boulder, Colorado Fire Department has a brush truck that can respond to wildfire. Like they have the minimum quals to be a wildland fire engine. And then there's contractor crews that are like private agencies that the federal government contracts to do fire suppression. usajobs.gov, that's where you can apply to become a wildland firefighter. And it is literally too complicated for me to explain. Somehow I've gotten a job every summer. Kyle.
It is an art. Yeah. But USA Jobs is for the federal side of things.
Yeah.
The equivalent to USA Jobs. So like here in Pennsylvania, it's the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. That's where you would find the state fire jobs, the state of Georgia, that portal.
And seriously, you can put my contact stuff in there. If anyone has questions, I can, do some fielding. It's almost pointless. It's such a convoluted way to get in, but you can, and they're especially for a couple summers, it really makes a lot of sense, especially if people are planning big adventures. You can get adventure money in a summer. Easy.
Okay.
They call it fire rich. So you talk about summers. Are these full-time jobs?
Yes, I'm a seasonal employee, and I have the right quals to move up to get a perm. But I really like the duty station that I work at. I'm not willing, and this is one of the many downfalls of the way fire, not the actual fire, but the fire apparatus, the wildland industrial complex. It is. I love this area that I live in. I love to be in these mountains. They're really important to me, and I don't want to go anywhere else. This is like my homies are here. This is my community, and so I'm just playing that waiting game, and it might bite me in the ass. I'm sorry, what was your question, Kyle?
Oh no, it was just you hit on it. You were the seasonal, that it's seasonal. It's only a fraction of the year.
Yes. So generally people that are fighting seasonally wildland fire for most of the US is going to be starting in May, ending in September or October. There are fire programs in the Northeast. There are fire programs in the Midwest. Those are going to have slightly different things going on in the Southeast. Same thing, but it's generally going to be, give her plus or minus 2 months on either end. And then, I currently work on a helicopter, work on a helitac crew. So we go in, we have an A-Star, which is, if you've ever seen any ski movie, it's probably the helicopter they're getting out of. This aircraft's designed for high mountain flying, aggressive flying, and we'll go in. We can usually, depending on weight, the answer for all fire questions, you guys, is it depends. So I've already broken a bunch of rules, but we'll just say we usually can get 3 firefighters in the helicopter, and we'll drop folks off. They'll have their tools, and this is when the fires are really small, like a bush, like a small tree. Okay. And we'll do that same exact thing. We'll start punching in that fire line while we're on the ground getting things set up. We'll have our helicopter. We'll have some of the crew members attach a bucket, and the pilot will go out and, find an approved dip site and start dipping water and putting water on the fire. Water absolutely helps, but at the end of the day, you can't put a fire out by putting the red retardant that you'll see on TV. Yeah. That doesn't put out fires. Humans putting tools in dirt for days and weeks and months on end is what does it. That helps those people on the ground, but it cannot it's not like you put it rains a little bit and people get all that fire up on the hill will be out. It's it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah.
If it rained for 4 days, and the town's flooded, sure.
So you're saying that all the news agencies should stop showing the fire, the plane with dropping the fire retardant over.
It
serves a purpose. It has a purpose.
Absolutely. I have benefited. My job benefits from that greatly. When we've requested retardant drops, absolutely. It does make for awe-inspiring television, right? It's a clear thing going on there. And same thing with our helicopter, us dropping, 150 gallons of water at a time. It really helps us, but if it was just a helicopter, it's not going to put the fire out. Outside of truly just a grass fire, and even then a grass fire can be ripping and a little helicopter's not going to catch it, so it depends.
Yeah.
But, and then the crew that I'm also on, we do short haul, which is a rescue technique that's used widely in Europe and Canada, and involves putting a rope underneath the belly of the aircraft and hooking 2 rescuers in. And we can go insert people, whether that be on the fire line or an injured person on the fire line, or it could be lost recreationalists in a search and rescue scenario. Mm-hmm. And then those folks get dropped off. The helicopter flies away, sets down somewhere, and the patient gets treated. And once they're ready to fly out, they'll call that helicopter back. And they'll bring down that rope through the canopy and we'll hook everyone in. We obviously all harnessed, helmeted up, and then pull us up and put us hopefully somewhere in a meadow. And then everyone will get on the ground. We'll take the rope off. Everyone goes inside the helicopter, fly off to the hospital or to a parking lot sometimes. If sometimes people are just lost and cold, so that's hanging underneath the helicopter on a rope is pretty fucking cool way to spend the summer.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's one of there's a very unique duality. I'm stoked, but unfortunately, the person that I'm there to help is probably having one of the worst days of their life, right? Yeah. So there's this and we want to be helped. I want to be a helper, right? And so I'm not I'm all here oh bro, so much fun. I'm a little more professional in that setting. So it is one of those again, that duality of 2 things, because I want to work. I want to use these skill sets that we get trained in and talk about every day, so if someone gets hurt, we want to be there.
No, and I'm sure they're very glad you're there.
Yeah.
People are calling y'all. They need some help.
Yeah,
for sure. So you mentioned that I'll call it the critical piece of the firefighting puzzle is the people on the ground.
Mhm.
So, and I know that you're pretty passionate about I'll say the treatment and the benefits that the wildland firefighters receive from either the federal government or whatever organization that is their governing body, or however you want to
Mhm.
say it. So I guess, where do you think we're at now on the conditions that y'all work in? Like, do we have room to grow? That type of thing.
Yeah, this is a good I'm speaking from a federal wildland firefighter perspective. The things I'll be talking about and mentioning applied to us and state agencies, city, county. They have their own regulations that I'm just not familiar with. So I can't speak to that. And all of these agencies, regardless, we all have our strengths and weaknesses and how we're working with our personnel. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. The last 2-3 years, there's just been all of these stories. I have my stories from like behind the curtain, the wildland side. I talk to my buddies. Oh, dude, you guys don't have enough people on your crew to be a 20-person hotshot crew. Like, to be certain types of organization in the fire structure, you have to have certain qualifications. You can't just have any 20 people. You have to have, meet all of these criteria. And if they can't hire 20 people, let alone 20 people with the right quals, they no longer get that status, and they can no longer do certain techniques. And so, I've seen that from behind the curtain, right? And fire has always had this shut up and dig. Don't talk to the media. We work in silence. That like John Wayne bullshit. The tables on that are kind of turning, right? And there's news stories that folks are willing to speak, and tell their story, their personal stories. And, reporters are kind of digging into this. Like, what do you mean? We had one of the worst fire seasons, and like, there weren't enough people to fight the fires. Why is that? Right? Like, I can go in my little overpriced mountain town here in Montana and go work for $20 an hour at the McDonald's tomorrow. We have people applying for a $15 an hour job in September, but that job doesn't start until May. And these humans aren't like, there's no benefits involved in this seasonal job. They're like, this just doesn't make sense when you can make so much more money and having freedom. Like, I'm embarrassed to talk about like how many things I've missed because of fire. And it's like cost me a relationship with a woman, like, just like it not working, right? Like, not being able to physically be there. And like that I've worked I think I'm making $18 an hour this season to hang out underneath a helicopter.
Yeah.
To manage I don't want to misquote the number, but it's got at least a 6-figure helicopter contract that on behalf of the government, and I'm making $18 an hour. Like that, it doesn't seem like a fair trade there, right? And we can look,
isn't adding up.
Yeah, and we can look over to the structure fire, and we can see that there are folks there making livable wages. Like I'm living in an Airbnb because it doesn't make the owner enough money in the winter, so he just rents it out. But like I can't afford housing here, and like I bump chairs at a ski hill and fight fire. Like, two things this town really loves and really needs.
Yeah.
Their economy is based on the outside, the out of doors. So like a bunch of burned up forest isn't going to help them, and as someone that likes to walk up mountains and snowboard down, chairlifts fucking rule. So like, ski hills are awesome. And it doesn't make sense. And I've watched some of the best firefighters with the just incredible attitudes, like people that we want in fighting fire because they're fucking smart. they've left because it doesn't make sense for them. Like,
Yeah.
They can go work at a structure fire, which there is not a lot of crossover there. Like, they have to start from the beginning. The only thing their Wildland Fire resume says is like, oh, this she's a tough motherfucker. Like, she can fight fire. She walks up mountains with chainsaws. Okay, she can hang with us. We have to teach her everything, but or the trades, right? Like, I have friends that are like, pulling serious, great money, great union benefits, driving UPS trucks.
Yeah.
It's just like, I love it just enough, and but it doesn't, I can see it. That's why I always say it's great for a couple summers, but that because of like human caused climate change and more people wanting to have a cute little house in the mountains, and our great grandfather's poor forest management policy, those three are kind of coming to a head right now. And you're having, overworked, understaffed, underpaid people that are homesick trying to manage these things. It just doesn't make sense,
and not enough of you.
Yeah. And not enough folks. And I say this all because I fucking love this thing. This thing's so cool. Like, I get to have a lot of incredible experiences and have that that fulfillment. But I mean, there are people just over the hill in Bozeman, Montana, people getting paid $15 an hour to literally defend like multi-million-dollar homes.
Yeah.
There's just some people, actually, some firefighters deployed their fire shelters. They got burned over. Thankfully there was not a fatality that day, but that's a very, very real thing.
That was one thing that I didn't realize until I started interacting with wildland firefighters, that how much effort goes into protecting structures. And I asked a bunch of guys one time, I was like, what's your one recommendation? Like, what would make your job easier? And they all at once said, if people would just follow the guidance that is out there of keeping brush away from the house, the structures and things like that, it goes from actual firefighting to babysitting and just putting out embers and things that could threaten the structure.
Yeah. Putting a sprinkler on and literally walking away. And I'm not exaggerating.
Versus sitting there and now having to try and fell trees away from a house, protecting the structure, etc.
Yeah, I have a great example, just real quick, which is an oxymoron for me. Real quick. We were on some fire on some national forest you've never heard of, and someplace you'll never go because that's where we end up, right? Like, just like, who knew that Dixie National Forest was in southern Utah? Like, me, I didn't know that until I was there. I was like, wait, what? My captain on this hand crew that I worked, we got up to this really nice house and we're doing structure assessments, and he's like, there's a week's worth of work here. We're moving. And, took the notes, reported that on. That was like our goal. And we get up to a small, pretty rough house. And this homeowner, they had gone in and done the work. Like, they might not have had a lot of money, but like, I was like, oh, wow. We take out these 4 trees and literally restack their firewood from next to the house to way over there. And we order a sprinkler kit for them. Hey, there's a chance here. And we did essentially not, like minimal. And that's huge. And there's a FireWise design. I love design. And FireWise design is the whole principle design set on how to build structures so that they can be more fire hardened, because we're never going to build anything fireproof just like we're never going to build a trail that's, even concrete will decompose. Like we'll rut out on the sides, 200 years later, it'll be rocks. So, so there's definitely a lot of techniques, and it always hurts me that someone has so much money and loves this property so much, but like doesn't bother to protect it and maintain it. Like I was at a show a couple summers ago, and the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I got 50 acres. What should I do?" I was like, "Yeah, you should make sure they're, like X, Y, and Z. Like you really want to remove all this brush." He's like, "Well, no, I moved to Montana to be in the woods." And I was just like, "Yeah, but like, does it matter if you're in the woods, if it all gets burnt up?" Like, and so many of these folks, it's not a matter of if, it's when. Mm-hmm. It really, really is. And that's like a scary thing to say out loud, but, not, hey man, I don't have to worry about it. I don't have a house.
Yeah. Like my parents.
Optimist.
No, but it does kind of hurt, when you're just like, you have all this, but you didn't do the last final step to protect your property. It'll help, there's no guarantee there.
Gives a better chance.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like preventative maintenance on any machine you have. It's very similar. I don't know. I'm just having problems with the juxtaposition of sending people out that make a little bit over minimum wage to protect these multi-million-dollar houses that are insured or should be insured if they're not. Yeah. So I'm just having a real hard time getting my head around this.
It is worth mentioning, like, wildland fires aren't just out there protecting like huge homes. Sometimes they're just, like I said, on some national forest you've never heard of, on a fire that once it is, contained and controlled, no one will ever think twice about it because it just ripped off 20,000 acres. And I am the first to tell you, like, fire on the landscape is super important. One of the reasons why we are having these mega fires, and it's lots of different puzzle pieces, is just that sparks are bad, fires are bad, put them out, Smokey Bear. And that's not the only reason. Like I mentioned, human caused climate change and more people wanting to live in these like little bitty, like cute little mountain towns and like pushing deeper and deeper into the woods. But yeah, that fire has been shaping this landscape. Indigenous people knew this, long before there was anyone that looked like me on this continent. And they use that to their advantage for, and I, by no means, like, I'm just a knuckle dragging firefighter, but even I know that. Right. And there's so many more people, so more well-educated to be speaking on your podcast about specifically that. But yeah, it's part of our ecosystem, and species all throughout North America have adapted to wildfire. And the anomaly is fire suppression and wildland firefighters. So having a patchwork of forest of different stands that have burned over time is so important. So when a fire comes through, it can't get that big head of steam and just plow some drainage down. And, of course, all of our models are built, models are just that, models. They can't factor in like how climate change has affected it. And they almost, sometimes they seem pointless because they don't, the things that they're predicting just like don't make sense. And it's not what's happening on the ground, these extreme weather events, right? And so, of course, we can't just like let every fire go. that would be irresponsible in 2023. That doesn't make sense. So yeah, it's this very delicate balance, But I think Americans really need to be more comfortable and having more smoke. I know y'all are more in the Midwest and out east, but having more smoke. And having prescribed fire on the landscape and burning when it makes sense. That's it. It's something. It's one of the many solutions to like to keep this thing going, to prevent these mega fires.
Yeah, because if I remember right, like our buddy Alex, he went to college for forestry, and I've talked to depth with him about what was that, since the 50s and 60s, where, like you said, they would just put out every fire.
Yeah,
Now they're
the
trying
10 a.m. policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Well,
when it was reported the next day at 10 a.m., it should be out, was the intended policy.
But yeah, now they're trying to go back and quote unquote fix this. And like we said, one way is prescribed fires. But if a forest has a really dense underbrush, it's really hard to do that without the fire getting out of control. So the next solution is to go out and clear it by hand, which isn't realistic. You can't do that over the whole West, right?
Yeah, like thinning a forest, but also like thinning a fuel break near a town's water supply is huge, right?
Yeah,
like that's what they did over the hill here in Bozeman, Montana, and that's huge, and things like that. But it and doing thinning projects where it makes sense, and thinning isn't inherently logging. And I'm not I'm totally some crunchy granola eater and dude, but logging has its place, but people, you'll see lots of uninformed people will just be like, logging or graze it or watch it burn, and that's not how it works. It's just no, that's not. And I've worked with a lot of loggers on the fire line. They come in and do hazard mitigation, these heinous trees that no one, we think we're, really good sawyers on the fire line. They're incredible. But when a logger shows up, they're nothing. These loggers are just unbelievable. And so, it all has its place in land management, but there's absolutely not one solution. It's just not. I wish.
Yeah, I mean,
I wish.
Very few things in life have one simple solution, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to try to bring this to a more positive note, because we've been kind of down in the doldrums a little bit.
But I just like to plug one last thing. If folks are more interested in understanding, and a lot more eloquent and way smarter people than me have talked about it, and just the trials and tribulations of wildland fire fighters as humans, check out the grassroots Wildland Firefighter. They have been posting articles, and getting the message out. They were instrumental in passing the legislation that positively affected my bank account in the Infrastructure Act.
Yeah, I was just about to bring that up, to bring us back up.
That's really important. That money, I am not good at math, but that money is going to run out in September of 23. September, October. So that's pretty alarming. But yeah, I mean, it definitely that has helped a lot, and I know that's kept a couple more people hanging on for a couple more seasons. But yeah, it's definitely. What was did you have any? Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to mention that the infrastructure bill that passed last year actually had some money earmarked towards wildland firefighters. So it's not a permanent solution, but at least it's something.
Absolutely.
So call your congressman.
Yeah. And
again.
The Tim Hart Act, which is some of the pieces of the Tim Hart Act were put into the infrastructure bill. But the Tim Hart Act is named in memorial of a smoke jumper out of West Yellowstone that died jumping a fire in 2020 in New Mexico. And his wife didn't want his death to be in vain and without meaning. And it's pretty powerful stuff when you meet people that have, their family that is people that died going to work. Yeah. The one of the strangest things that I'm sorry, I'm going to get this negative because that's where I am, man.
No, you're fine. I have my patented questions at the end. I'll try to.
we get paid 25% more when we're doing something hazardous. So that is when we're behind uncontrolled fire line. But smoke jumpers, when they jump out of an aircraft, perfectly good aircraft to deploy a parachute to go to work, they don't get hazard pay.
Really?
And they smoke jumpers get injured in landings fairly frequently.
Yeah, their knees are shot. I don't know a smoke jumper that hasn't had knee surgery.
Yeah. We were involved with a couple of years back doing a medical evac on a smoke jumper, and I mean, he 3 reconstructive surgeries on his pelvis, and whole junk show. I had very briefly, I had some smoke jumper dreams, but I really like walking.
Yeah.
I like skateboarding.
You like skateboarding, you like snowboarding. You kind of need your lower extremities for that.
No, I don't. I'm good. But I mean, that's a real rich irony. Like, they don't even get hazard pay for jumping out of an aircraft,
which is absurd.
And there's some movement on it. And there's a lot of folks like the National Federation of Federal Employees, the NFFE, is the labor union. They're doing some work in Washington, as is the Grassroots Wildland Firefighter organization. But it's if anyone's familiar with like government related things, like my pay raise came from Congress. I didn't walk in to my boss, who's done this position for like my boss's boss, who's done this for 30 years. He knows that folks are struggling with mental health. Like, he sees it in his own personnel. He sees it amongst his friends. He knows we have, so much exposure to cancer. They know people that all come down with lung cancer, like fire smoke, just as bad as anything else, parts per million. It's pretty astonishing. Just because it's like, oh, it's a campfire. Like, no.
The concentration much higher, right?
Yeah, like living and breathing and sleeping in those environments, which we do, very bad. And like, I don't smoke or drink or anything, so like, I'm hoping that'll like eke me.
Give me a little
the 34 years of not smoking cigarettes will like maybe, all this wildfire smoke, maybe I'll get out.
But
write your folks in Washington and look up Grassroots Wildland Firefighting.
And I'll put links for all that stuff in the show notes.
Sweet,
Definitely go look it up, because if you haven't been watching the news in the last, I don't know, decade, fires aren't going to go anywhere. They're going to be here every year, like for probably forever. Like, I don't see it getting better for the foreseeable future, right? And every year it seems like it's the worst year, and then the next year happens. And
one of the last flights that I had to Boise, because out of Boise is NIFC, the National Interagency Fire Center. And so the last time that I was there, the woman that was sitting next to me was a staffer for a congressman that was supporting some reform.
Cool.
To support firefighters, and she was coming out to get the facts.
Cool.
Because, as she said on the plane, I know nothing about this. We know nothing about this. We support these decisions, but we need more information to actually find out what people are risking their lives for, how they're risking their lives, and what's at stake. So it does actually, I mean, it is something that is being discussed.
If there are any congressional staffers listening to the show, my DMs are wide open. I want you all wide open.
I want to see you testifying in front of Congress.
No. Wait, you guys, I can't wear a hat in here? No, I can't speak at any place that requires no hat.
You want me to answer a question directly? I'm sorry, sir.
How many fucks am I allowed to say? Because I've been really well behaved tonight.
No, you're doing great. Okay, so we've been going for a while, and Kyle's gonna hold me to the fire to try to keep us. Oh, he just picked up a weapon of discretion. Keep us on time. But so we'll go into my normal questions. So I ask this of everybody: what is your biggest outdoor mistake?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if it's my biggest, but I think it's one that I always remember. I used to live at Neal Gap in Georgia, right along the Appalachian Trail, in a civilian conservation corps built building, and worked at an outfitter. And just above the shop, 2.2 miles away along the trail, is Blood Mountain. Has a stone shelter on it, and like Earl Schaefer, the first person to walk from Georgia to Maine and be a thru hiker, stayed there. So like, and I like, I was like, oh, I gotta stay up there. And it's this gross, dingy shelter. It's just like, there's no windows, there's no doors anymore. Like, it was a nice cabin when he stayed in it, because like the Civilian Conservation Corps had built it 15 years prior, or what have you. But I went up there. There's like tarps over the windows, which they like try to keep the snow out and the rain out. And my house where I live is just 2 miles down the trail, even less as the crow flies. Now I'm out there. It's cold, because it's cold in Georgia, and I think this was in February. And there's snow on the ground, and I get up there. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna make dinner, and I'm like, oh shit, my lighter. How do I light my stove? I could have walked down to my house, got the lighter, and walked back up like no big deal. And I was like, nope, no, you made your choices, bro. Like, and I literally made oatmeal the next morning with like ice water, because chunks of ice were coming out of my water bottle. I was like, nope, you made your choices. You're going to eat this.
Delicious.
But yeah, that's a great example. Like, I don't know, I'd already hiked the Appalachian Trail and a bunch of smaller of the trails, and already the Pacific Crest Trail. And like, it's just a great example. Like, I make mistakes. I'm not infallible, mere mortal shit. Right.
Yep. That's exactly what we're trying to show.
Yeah. And
that's what Out of Order said too. He did this through hike, and then I forget what trail it was.
Long trail.
And he was like, I got my ass handed to me.
Yeah. Oh, this was in my backyard. Like, it's just this like. So, yeah, and that's a very. I always think about that, and like, it's great when you can make mistakes and they're not gonna kill you, or they're not gonna injure you or whomever you're hiking with. But then like, as you start excelling and like pushing your outdoor tool set, like, oh, I'm going to try off trail travel. Like, everything gets more serious, right? If you make a mistake off trail travel and have a twist an ankle, even not breaking something, like limping off trail back to the trails, So like, I always try to use, I think about like, it's a little, I'm not a big like mantra, but I'm like, think of the lighter. Like, I always like, that's something like when I'm packing for, something as simple, even as like going up, doing a little split boarding, here in Montana, something real basic, very mellow, not an avalanche train or anything. I'm always like, think of the lighter. What am I forgetting? Like, so yeah. But always always a mini Bic lighter, because I'm not, it weighs less than the big one.
Yeah. Super ultralight.
Yeah. And of course, I took the child little flick thing off.
Oh yeah,
that thing just gets in the way.
Saved a gram, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, it's a practical thing, man. Cold thumbs, dude.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cold fingers, yeah. But also, it weighs something, so yeah, get it out of my pack.
Okay, and now my like catch-all question: is there a question we should be asking you that I just completely miffed and didn't do it?
I don't know. I don't know.
And that's okay if we just did a great job and we didn't do it.
Oh yeah, you guys crushing it. 5 stars.
Perfect.
Yeah. use Mere Mortal 69,420 to get a discount on something. Yeah. Yeah, I'm familiar. You guys killing it. That podcast money.
Oh yeah, acting like we have sponsors. We don't have sponsors.
Dude, it's really okay to just like do something for the love, right?
No, this is fun. We have a great time.
I'm like, I roll around on a stupid wooden skateboard for the last like 25 years, and I'm like slowly just keep getting worse at it because I'm scared of getting more hurt, and I just love it. Like, I love it,
That's me with basketball. Like,
I've
I've been playing, and then like I tore my ACL and it's repaired now, but now I need to get back. And I'm going to go back, and hopefully I don't re-injure myself. I'm just going to have to go at 95% instead of 100%. Right?
Yeah. Don't go so hard in the paint.
Yep, literally.
Oh, you don't know Trev.
That's kind of my thing. All right.
You're just putting people on posters. Just
that's right. Poster
dunking on these fools.
All right. Let's bring it home now. Okay. So, Matt. Plug yourself. I know, like, you got your Instagram. That's how I found out.
Oh, yeah. Well, to tell you how much I curate my Instagram is I hiked the Superior Hiking Trail, and like in October, my last post was, "Hey, I'm walking north," and that's yet to fucking post anything else. So like, but yeah, I actually, and I did a 500-mile bike packing route. I've yet to post a single photo of that on Instagram because fuck them. Like, like, I don't know, man. You buy me a cup of coffee, I'll talk about it all day. We'll bro out. Let's go for a run or something. I don't know. Talk about it then. But yeah, Fire X Neck, which is my Instagram handle, and I was in my youth was a devout Chicago Fire fan. So hence the fire. And my college mascot was a leatherneck, so Fire Neck.
There you go.
There we go. Nothing to do with Wildland Firefighting, but here I am.
That's good. All right. So now we'll move into my normal end of episode spiel. So yeah, if you want to show the podcast some love, the way to do that is give us 5 stars on your podcast rating apparatus of choice. You can follow me at Trevor Bowman on Instagram. Kyle has no social media presence, so keep waving at people that look like they're named Kyle.
Yo, Kyle.
Yes.
Someone pulled up at the bus stop the other day, PA plates. I just fucking waved to him.
Yes.
Boy's like, what's going on? I was like,
so
like, maybe. I was never seen his face until right now.
Yeah, Matt got on the show, and the first thing before we started recording, he starts waving. He goes, "Oh, you big Kyle!" Starts waving at me. Made my night.
All right. So,
so it's working. Yeah,
it is working. It's catching on. It's a nationwide phenomenon. You can follow the Instagram, the podcast on Instagram at @MereMortalPod. If you want to send us an email, tell us we're doing a great job, or whatever,
or horrible job,
or horrible job, I guess. It's adventuring for mere mortals @gmail.com. If you're a Discord person like myself, we have a Discord. That's also in the show notes if you want to do that. But that's all I've got. So, Matt, thanks for coming on. Like, I learned so much about wildland firefighting. I was kind of a noob. I knew basically nothing. I know about trees, but I don't know how to fight a fire.
Oh, it's just tools and dirt.
Hey, that's a very simplistic way to put something that's very important.
Put cold stuff on the hot stuff. Hopefully it's water, but sometimes it's just cold dirt.
Well, thank you for coming on so much. Yeah. Thank you for coming on. I know everybody that listens is really going to get a kick out of this and learn something and have another thing to be passionate about and get you all some better working conditions.
Yeah,
for sure.
That. And a shout out to not only Matt for being a devoted wildland firefighter, but also to I'd like to give a personal shout out to all those individuals that I've had the pleasure of working with and interacting with in New Mexico, Colorado, Arizona, and Idaho. You guys know who you are. So thank you. Keep doing what you're doing and stay safe out there.
Yeah,
we're going into another, probably what's going to be a big fire season.
Well, all right. We'll see everybody next month.
Toodles.
Toodles.